Hello and welcome back to Ground Level Theology. With me, as always, is the co-host to Ground Level Theology, Dave Hoffman. Dave, welcome back.
Thanks. I'm glad to be back. Are you pumped? Are you
I
excited for
am
tonight's
really
episode?
pumped.
Yeah.
It is my birthday, folks. I am doing
Yeah.
a podcast episode on my birthday and I could not be more pumped.
Yeah. We don't need to blow out any candles. We're gonna, I don't know, blow it out of the park. I don't know.
Oh man.
Gotcha.
Yeah, a little bit of an update. I have not told David this because I wanted a genuine reaction,
Oh
but I
no.
did get some birthday presents. One of them, which is the Trump Bible.
Oh my gosh. You made Candace spend her hard-earned money. I'm just kidding.
She got me a Trump Bible. I have not
Oh,
opened it because I'm a
no, don't
collector, you know?
mid-condition, man.
Yeah,
Don't
exactly.
open that, buddy.
So I have it.
This is real life.
I was overjoyed to open it up and see that. I was laughing, I think, for a couple minutes, just like,
Oh
oh
my
man,
gosh.
yeah, I got it. And she had not yet seen the episode, right? Because she watches it when y'all do. Uh, she
Oh my.
she does not get to get a preview or anything. So
Nope. She
she
just
bought it
knew.
for me. She's just a wonderful, wonderful wife, and she got it for me without even knowing. So that was that
Yeah,
was
maybe
awesome.
the KJV is a cult, and then they also have their leader.
Yeah, right.
I'm just playing. Oh
Oh
wow.
man.
Well, happy
So
birthday.
yeah, thank you. And I really wanted to see a reaction with that one.
Yeah, like everyone on Spotify, you just, you know, eye roll. It's just,
And if you don't know
insert
what I'm
eye roll.
talking about with this, you have to go to the previous episode on the Trump Bible. So, um,
Check it out.
yeah. Well,
Gosh.
folks, today we have an episode for you. And, I'm coming off of a youth retreat in which we did a great thing, where we go out and we try to really let God speak in that weekend. And so, even as I've served with the youth, and even during this weekend, one of the things that we use, and it always comes up every now and again, is how much to utilize small groups. We use that as sort of a tactic this weekend with them, break them into little small groups so it's more
Breakout. Yeah.
manageable. Yeah, and then leaders are over certain ones. That way we can give a intimate time with each individual student with a leader to be able to be prayed for and talked to in a very intentional way.
Mm.
Which really brought to mind this topic of small groups. As much as it's pretty common in some churches, it's definitely known. There's still actually some debate as to how much we should be utilizing it, right?
Hmm.
Some churches don't use it because it doesn't work for them. And then some churches just full sail go
Like
right
you
into
have to.
small groups.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's their whole church. And so I thought, small groups is somewhat of a phenomena. And so this episode's really going to explore small groups, what they are, how they're used, and then with the information, you can maybe come to um, make a decision for yourself as to whether you should implement a small group in your church or in your local body. So Dave, as always, man, you are the bricklayer, dude. You are the
Let's do it.
foundation for this podcast. So
Oh
I'm just
gosh.
gonna hand this off to you, and then I'm gonna walk away now. I'm just kidding.
Okay. All right. Buckle up, everybody.
Yeah. So go ahead and
All right.
tell us what small groups are, and let's start this conversation.
Yeah. Like anything in ministry, we can find a way to, you know, we take a good thing and we can blow it out of proportion or
Right.
find ways to make it a distraction or, uh, as a good Calvinist, I would say we humans ruin everything. Um, just kidding. No, but small groups, give a simple definition, it's just as opposed to congregating, or quite literally congregation, as a whole body, as every single Christian that's part of a particular local church. Small groups are the opportunities that we create, the environment that we create
Right.
to kind of, yeah, break that congregation up, not in disunity, hopefully, but where you can be able to meet on a more personal level. You have more time allocated specifically for the individual members of that group's needs, maybe to discuss the sermon, maybe to discuss Sunday school, maybe to discuss life that might not be possible uh, on the average Sunday morning, before service, during service, after service. And it's usually sometime during the middle of the week as well,
Hmm.
to help kind of break up the space between meeting and, being together as a body.
Yeah. I think that's a pretty good layout of what a small group is. I gotta ask you though, and
Hmm.
here's where we're gonna start really getting into some meat of this, a little bit of the debate. And this is actually a question, even in trying to implement small groups, I've had full-on discussions on this question alone. And so you and I might differ on this
Sure.
one, and I think it'll be pretty fun to have a conversation on this question alone. How many are in a small group? You're gonna build a small group
Yeah.
in your congregation. How many is that?
Yeah. Preferably, well, definitely more than one, preferably more than
Okay.
two.
Okay.
you
Solid.
know,
Here's where
like,
this is exactly where we disagree. I think one. No, I'm just
okay,
kidding.
that's a big group,
It's a
buddy.
it's an
Yeah.
introvert small group.
Yeah. Introverted. Yeah. You're like, yeah, me, myself, and I, the journey to self discovery. Oh,
It's
gosh.
me and God. That's my small group.
No. Oh, yeah. What was it like? Or SpongeBob? Yeah. This is Penny, Chip, and used napkin. you know, like just hanging out. No, but yeah, how many? It is relative,
Hmm.
isn't it? Because and it really does come down to the size of, like, if you're going to implement small groups, it does come down to the size of the church. For me, my church, it's kind of just it's the right size where by having a men's ministry and a women's ministry, uh, that could be seen as two small groups.
Yeah.
But there's enough men and enough women. Well, there's not enough men and not enough women where we would necessarily split it up where we have two women's,
Hmm.
two men's. But we do have enough where we needed a men's and a women's Bible study and small group ministry. Other churches, they might have the numbers where it's like, goodness, yeah, we have a 55 and over. We have, a young marrieds with kids. We
Yeah.
have like a college, then we have a high school, then we have a middle school. And then depending on the size of the church, it's like, gosh, like the
Hmm.
young adult group, like we might have like five small groups alone just for the young adults, depending on the size of the congregation. So I think you need to have at least more than two, because
Right.
then you're just like one, or it's just like you and a buddy.
Right.
Like, you need to actually be a group. But how many is too many?
Right.
Like, I
That's where
think
it
we
gets
might
down to.
like what, like, yeah, like what do you like? I don't like I think we agree that, yeah, you need to have at least, like, yeah,
Well,
not one,
you
more than
know,
two, but
I'm
like,
I'm just gonna like insert this here. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but this
yeah,
is this is the funny part of about how much are in a small group, right? You're saying two or more, right? But inherently tied to how many are in a small group is how many is too much, right? Where you have to split, which is also tied to how many is too little, right?
yeah,
Because you don't want to
correct.
break off too early and it's like, well, we have 8 or 10 people in here, but we only have two people in this one.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so
It's
what's that range in your
100%.
opinion for like what an ideal small
Well,
group is?
I think I like to answer, like, what would Jesus do? He would answer that question with a question, right?
Hmm.
And I think to answer that question is maybe ask another question. You need to know, well, what is the goal of a small group? What
Okay,
is the
yeah.
purpose of a small group? And if the purpose is just like camaraderie, well, like, okay, camaraderie, yeah, more the merrier. Like,
Right.
especially if you're an extrovert. But if it's like, no, like I'm trying to get out of the small group what we might not be able to get out of Sunday morning,
Hmm.
which is I want to have a more intimate space
Right.
for a more intimate discussion about whatever, Bible study, the sermon, life problems and struggles, or prayer. Well, then I need to think of, well, what's the right number where that environment, it's, I don't want to have too many people where some people aren't able to share or be
Hmm.
seen. And I also don't want it where it's like, maybe it's just like me and two other people, and like, well, we all shared, and you're done in like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, and that's if you like really take your time, right? Like, you want the right amount where uh, everyone can be seen and heard, and then it's also not just you and someone else, and then you're twiddling your thumbs for the other. Well, it says we got to meet for at least 30 to 45 minutes. We said everything we needed to say in 15. Like like what do you do? So
Hmm.
yeah, I think you really have to. How many is too many? It's like, well, if you're not able to get through the questions of a Bible study, well, if you're not able to feel like you can kind of go around the circle and be able to show, well, this is what's going on this week, or this is what I'm seeing in this text, or
Hmm.
this is like, hey, it's Tuesday night, but what was preached on Sunday is like already rattling my brain. Like I'm already like finding myself like we just heard it on Sunday, and I'm already like not tracking again.
Yeah.
Like y'all like help me out, you know?
Ah, Dave, you're frustrating me only because you
I'm
are
sorry.
breaking off wisdom here, and I wanted a
Sorry.
number.
I know. Well,
I mean, no, everything you said is
right?
so true. Because what I was gonna say and what I
Like I
came
don't
down
know.
with is anywhere between, like, just it very generically, anywhere between 6 and 10, right? And then once you get towards 12, you want to split back into two sixes. But you're absolutely right. So if you're
Yeah.
starting a prayer meeting and you have three absolute prayer warriors in there, then you only want four people.
Right.
Because
Yeah,
three
exactly.
of them are going to take up 30 minutes in and
They're
of
gonna kill
themselves.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
In a good
So
way, kill it, not like kill it.
So, yeah, you're absolutely right. It really depends on what you're trying to get accomplished, and then with that, who's in it. And what's funny too is like I sort of balance that out in my own prayer groups, not in my own
Mhm.
prayer groups, in my own small groups, of like, well, I know this person's there, this person's there, this person's there. And they tend to be very open about sharing because they love the community. Whereas these people are introverted. And so I'll kind of combine them with these other people. That
Yeah,
way I know some time can be filled, even on a bad day. And then on a good day, we're going to have a lot of good discussion. And
that's
so
true.
it's sort of you're thinking through this, but it that does actually really affect the numbers as well. But would there
Yeah.
be a maximum, maybe like just a general, like generic figure of where you might say, okay, now you're no longer in the small group range. Now you're starting to get into like, I don't know, like a ministry,
Medium.
right? Like
Like yeah, like
no,
a
like at
ministry
some
team.
point,
Yeah.
let's say now you're at 20 people, 8 people
Yeah.
is some people's churches, right? Like that's all they have.
Correct.
But now you're at 20 and you're like you're not really a small group anymore as much as you're a men's ministry, not a men's
Yeah.
small group.
Yeah. I would definitely like you're right. Like I would break that off, and I would like have like 7, 7, and 6.
Yeah.
Like something like that, and just like and then like the group of 6 is like, well, give them like an extra elder or deacon or something,
Right.
like because the deacons don't need Bible study. We all know that they're we're in ministry. We don't need ministry. It's like
Yeah.
no, but like yeah, number like well, and then maybe even also a safe number is like Jesus had 12.
Right.
He single hand, and that's like not like you have to have 12, or like because he also sent out the disciples
Hmm.
two by two, where it's like, hey, you need a buddy, but you don't need everybody. Like you have me, and you know what I mean. So like, there's
Yeah.
and you had ones that were just naturally closer. Oh, look, James and John, and then his brothers, or like you have Peter, Matthew, James, and John. Like they're always just hanging out. Like you still have core groups, because and even Jesus had his closest.
Right,
You know,
right, right.
he had
He had
Peter,
his
James,
inner
and John.
circle, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and but that's like that's like a small group within a small group. Uh, because he had many disciples other than the apostles.
Oh yeah, it said he had like what was
So
it, 500 or so like that,
yeah,
or
yeah,
at least 70.
exactly.
We know he sent
Yeah,
out 70.
yeah, not a
Um,
small group.
yeah, not a small
Like,
group at all.
um, but
uh,
like, yeah,
yeah, I don't know. In my head, I feel like the biggest possible group I can think of while still being considered a small group is something like 15. Because at
yeah,
like 15, I'm
like
starting to think now you're
manageable.
getting into ministry.
Like you could do it.
Yeah.
Like you could do 15, but you also like think about like you have to see like you can see on Sundays who talks to who.
Hmm.
Also, like, hey, if they're like always talking together, like at the hospitality table, it's going to be pretty natural if I say, hey, like, you guys should start a small group together.
Yeah.
Because they're like, well, we already talk, we already go to lunch together, we already do like, yeah, that's it's also like tough where like if you're trying to get a set number, like, oh, they're a group of four, they need six, and
Hmm.
then you might put the couple that doesn't know the other two couples. And not that it can't work, but it's just like I don't know them. And then like maybe I don't it's not that I don't trust them, but like what if small group just happens like these two are super vulnerable, because they know each other. And then
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, oh, like I know it's a small group, but like I don't know y'all like that just yet.
Hmm.
And so I mean that might be like more of like a con, like a pro or con section. I'm not trying to
Yeah.
get ahead, but like numbers matter in the sense that like yeah, if you
Right.
had this set number in your head that like I'm trying to give like versatility where I'm trying to be like it needs to
Yeah.
be like 4 on the
I mean,
low
we're
end,
not setting
15 on the
formulas
high end.
here. You know, this
Yeah.
this podcast is in some sense to have a philosophy of, you
Oh, we're
know.
the end all be all, everybody.
It
Okay.
starts at 4 and it ends precisely at 9, people, okay?
You know what? Oh my gosh, you're cringe. Well, you know what, Mike? We're two or more
Oh
are
my
gathered
goodness.
in my name. I know. I'm not sorry. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to just
It's
totally derail.
it's so funny because I hear that taken out of context so often.
Right. I
And
know.
yeah,
Me
no,
too.
that's that's funny. Okay, so one of the things that I've heard from churches that don't like to do small groups is is sort of I'm trying to I'm trying to word this properly. Is sort of that this idea comes from a like business point of view, that something like the purpose driven church or something like that is sort of a reconstructing of the church, and so it brings in this business model
Oh,
for the
like different
prosperity of the church.
departments.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Like,
And so I
yeah.
kind of want to move into, well, let's address that a little bit and talk about the biblical grounding to small groups, right?
Mm, yeah. Yeah.
Because we definitely see that in the Bible.
Yeah. Like they're, yeah. Yeah. I agree. Like, um, 100%. And it's not just like, oh, just in the New Testament with churches. Like it's
Right.
not a
Oh yeah,
total
for
like
sure.
they didn't just like Jesus didn't reinvent the wheel, and well, he invented the wheel, but like like and it's not just like, oh, in the New Testament era with the we're indwelt with the Holy Spirit and we have house churches.
Oh yeah,
That is a
yeah,
New
yeah.
Testament example, but we have it even in the Old Testament as far as sharing the workload. One person can't bear things on their own.
Mhm.
Iron sharpens iron, which
Yeah.
like that verse inherently encourages you know
Yeah, right
a
on.
body, a community working together,
Or
where you
even
need at least someone.
yeah, like as you were saying that iron sharpens iron, but then there's also, I can't remember if it's a proverb or it's in a psalm, but it's like the three chords together
Oh,
cannot be equal.
Ecclesiastes
That's what it
3.
was.
It's
It's another
Ecclesiastes
one
3,
of the
1 through
wisdom
6.
books.
Yeah, I know. Well, and they do
Yeah.
that at weddings a lot, right?
Yeah.
Because it says and that's like, hey, because a cord of 3 strands is not easily broken.
Yeah.
You're right.
And and obviously that's pertaining to God. And
And then like husband and wife
yeah.
in the immediate context,
Right, right, right. But then
but it means
the
it in
very
general too.
idea as well. I mean, with along tracking along with ironing, sharpening iron as well, is like the more you can kind of break into these very intimate accountability groups,
Yeah,
right?
right.
Is going to strengthen your life and keep you from tearing in that using that illustration.
Yeah. I
So
mean, even I get, and now like we have a couple written down, y'all, because we always like, we're human
yeah.
and we want to know where we're going. But like some that like we didn't even think of yet. But like you can go all the way back to Genesis in the
Hmm.
very beginning. Like, oh, like hey, the fall hasn't happened yet, sin hasn't happened yet, and God says it's not good for man to be alone.
Wow. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and it's like not even just like I need an Eve. Like I'm a man. Like, maybe you're called to singleness, but it's like okay, even if you're called to singleness, Paul had Priscilla and Aquila.
Yeah.
Jesus had, so
He
it's
had
not because of the
Barnabas.
fall. Yeah, he had Like it's not because of the fall that it's because of the fall that we get lonely.
Hmm.
But we were never supposed to be alone. We
Right.
had fellowship with God. We had fellowship with other image bearers. And so how much more now after the fall? Like now until we're reunited with Christ. Like we need it's almost like we need people now more than ever. It's not good to be alone. And it's actually when Eve was, they were in isolation and they weren't working with the Lord, that Satan tempted them. And so can't tell you how many times like a small group person,
Hmm.
or even at Moody when we had like our floors, like because we had different like the floor, you almost have
Yeah.
like that tribal mentality, right? Where it's like, not Colby 17, we're a group of men. It's like Colby 16. Well, we're a group of men. No, you're not. We're the men. We're a floor above you. We're real men.
Yeah,
you know?
that's
And
really funny too,
praise
because you
God.
have the entire student body, then you
Yeah,
have men, then you have women, then in the
right.
men, you had people that reside in Culbertson Hall, which is Colby, that's what we're talking about.
Yes,
And
I know.
then in there, you had 17 floors. First one doesn't count, because that's just the information desk and
Just a
stuff and where
lobby.
the
It's
elevators are. So
like a
you have
hotel.
16 floors of 30 men.
Yeah,
So now you've
dude.
broken that up, and then there's two sides of the hall, like
Yeah. United
separated
by
by
one
that.
bathroom in
Yeah,
a
united
lounge.
by one bathroom and like a
A lounge.
little rec area that's about the size of about 20 by 20.
Yeah, that was wreck.
And but then even in there, I mean, I was part of the leadership group. I still had prayer meeting.
Yeah,
And then we had our
annual.
like, yeah, so like even there we sort of collected into smaller groups.
We
And
did.
so we're just like it's just constantly dividing smaller into smaller into smaller so that you can get into this accountable group of being able to speak into people's lives. And I
Yeah.
think
Oh,
that
it bro,
model,
sis.
it's like, yeah. and
Oh
and I think
gosh.
that model serves so well, but when we think back to it, this whole model that we're sort of looking at is coming from Exodus 18:21, when Moses is essentially, he has the mega of mega churches, right? He has an entire nation underneath him.
How
He's
many
the
thousands? Like
he's
a
the
lot.
sole judge as the prophet of the Lord. And Moses' father-in-law, Jethro, says, "Hey, what are you doing? You're burning yourself out. You gotta elect these leaders over the people so that they can hear and they can judge, and then you can keep up with those guys and then be able to get the information because you're spread too thin." And so
Yeah.
from there we get the inception of breaking it down and having small groups and then being sort of accountable to those leaders instead. Um, So we have that idea of breaking into small groups coming out of Exodus. And then even as you said, we see it in the New Testament, Jesus has his 12. He doesn't have his 70. I mean, there is 70 followers that he sends out. Yeah, indeed, they're all his disciples, but he has his 12 that he's working with that are his, and then he also has his inner group. And then you also brought up the early churches, right? And we
Oh
know that
yeah.
there's house churches. We have historical evidence for that, but also like Paul's persecution. He's saying he's going into houses and pulling people out. In these worshipers are having to jump out of the windows, right, and try and get out of
Yeah.
this house because they are small group churches. Because they're being persecuted, they can't go out into the synagogues. They have to collect into these small group churches. Um,
Hmm?
I'm just thinking like even with small group churches, I mean we can think of Philemon, right? Paul is writing to Philemon. He's the owner of a small church. Lydia, the seller of purple, she's also the head of a small church as someone who owns the house. Um, we can see that there's this phenomena of having enough people and starting to collect together, worship over the reading of the word, some prayer, and then slowly growing. But then you end up at this point where you are a church, right?
Yeah.
Because I think at this point, by the time Paul is writing to Philemon or talking about Lydia, they're already like they're pretty set as a church by this
Right.
time. And so I
Yeah.
think I think small groups has its purpose, but then it also has its like purpose in sort of like a startup to a church,
Yeah.
you know?
Like it's like you need to know that like yeah, it's like almost like knowing its limitations before you get started.
Yeah.
Okay? Like know like hey, like these are all the good things, but like no, like this is to the extent. Like it's to this extent. And when you get beyond a certain point or threshold, then you know it's like okay, it's getting bigger. We got to branch out or we got to figure something out. Cuz like you can have a great small group or a house church. But you also, to use the example of Jesus is healing so many people and it's so crowded they have to lower a paralytic through the roof.
Yeah.
Like that might be your indicator. I think
Yeah.
our small group's too big because we have to open up the windows so people outside can hear inside,
Yeah, that's right.
you know? So like you might have to like and I've seen it happen. It's like people want to like join a particular small group or they're asking like are there openings or like hey, this house is closer
Hmm.
to my house than the other small group.
Yeah.
Can I join this one? And it's kind of like, well, there's not really room. Like I live in a townhouse or something. Like, yeah, like, or like even, or like, what if you want to be a leader, but you can't offer your home?
Hmm.
Like, there's like always like that balance. Like, oh, and I speak from experience. Like, I'm a pastor that lives with his in laws right now.
Yeah.
I don't get to go, hey, come over to my house for Bible study.
Yeah.
Like, it's not my house.
Or
Like,
like or like I can invite my church out to my house, but they'd have to drive some like over 40 miles, right? In
yeah,
LA.
exactly.
So
Like,
it's
I'm
like
not
they're
gonna
gonna have
make
to
them
be
do
in
that.
traffic for quite some time because I'm pretty far away from my church.
Right. Well, that's what, like, and that's like I think like geographical location, like when they think like the church in Ephesus,
Hmm.
house churches, but the cities were like smaller. They really were more consolidated. You live in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Even if I was in Baltimore City, I live in a suburb, but even my suburb, like we're spread out. My church alone, the property itself is split between three counties, which means I have people from all three counties. Like, do
Man.
you want to drive 45 minutes to Pennsylvania, 40 minutes east to Baltimore County, or do you want to drive, 25 minutes south to where I'm at in Westminster? Like we're like small groups are tougher because we are spaced out as members. And so it's actually like for us, it's like small group is like we meet at church because that's the same distance for us all.
So you have a
you know?
natural divide for your
Like
small groups. It's like, all right, we're gonna split into states.
Yeah, well, where's your border? Like, like, uh, and then also like people that do it by age groups.
Hmm.
Well, my church, has a median age, and then we're also, about 50-50 male to female. Like, and I'm just saying,
Yeah.
like,
Okay.
if I was to start a young adult small group, it would be me and Amber.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? A kid's small group. Well, dep- that doesn't
Yeah. I
like maybe
I
for you. Like, so
actually
just trying to.
I want to pause there too because you just brought up a really good point. Small groups. I mean, when we're thinking about a small group, we gotta initially. I mean, you said it before, but we sort of to make this point more emphasized. When you're creating a small group, you have to think about its purpose because a small group doesn't inherently have purpose. A small group
Correct.
is a concept. Your purpose is going to determine the numbers and what it's going to be used for, right? I mean, if you have a
Right.
prayer meeting, you can have a prayer small group and you only really need 2 to 3 to 4 people in a prayer meeting in a
Sure.
collection of maybe prayers from the church. Or you can have a small group Bible study that's between 6 to 10, right? Or
Right.
you can have a small group that you're hoping to be a church and you're going to grow all the way to maybe 20 before you start looking for a building because it's meeting in a house, right?
Right.
So I think you really brought something out there, especially with what you were saying. You know, if I want to start a young adult small group, it's just me and my wife. It's like, yeah, I guess when we're talking about this, folks, a small group is a concept, and you have to know your intention behind the small group, the purpose behind it,
Well,
and that will
yeah.
help you progress forward. But even with that, knowing its purpose, there still becomes there's still this sort of pro and con that you have to navigate between, right? Because you have to know what it's used for, but you should probably also know maybe some warnings about what you're gonna do, or some of these pros are gonna help you navigate that. So I kind of want to maybe speak about some of the pros and cons behind the the small group, because there are pros and there are cons inherent
Yeah.
to small groups that but purpose is not.
Oh no, yeah. Advantages and challenges. We're going to use, nice PC terms. There's no disadvantages. There's no bad. It's just a
Okay.
challenge.
Gotcha,
Yeah, yeah,
gotcha.
bull. No, I'm just kidding. You're like, yeah, bull. Oh no. Oh gosh. Well,
Yeah.
also because like the universality, like there's like right before, like, and this could be a pro or a con. Like, are small groups universal in the sense of like, what is a small group ministry at a mega church in normal suburb in America, as opposed to, oh, we have small groups when I'm in hiding in a house church in the Middle East or communist China.
Yeah.
Like, they are, like, they have to be small
Yeah,
groups.
they are
They
mandatory at
have
that
to
point.
space out to be strategic.
Yeah.
Like they have to do it. Like they don't like they don't have the joy and the privilege and the right like we do in America, where we all can get together. Like, even Together 2016, they did a huge thing on the mall in Washington D.C. Like, Casting Crowns was there, Francis Chan was there. I'll name drop about like other people. Like a lot
Yeah.
of great pastors, speakers, worship leaders that write Christian music, and like we are on the mall, like literally between the Lincoln Memorial and the National Monument in DC, like out loud, huge speakers, like, look at us, look at all the Christians one spot. And obviously it wasn't every Christian everywhere, but like we could be bold because of America and we have a First Amendment.
Yeah.
That does not get to happen like in so many countries. And so like we call it small group ministry because we had the blessing of actually being able to gather
Yeah.
all
We
at once sometimes.
we have
Whereas for someone else, like small group, yeah, Yeah, they're all small. Like, what do you mean? Like, I
It's
don't
like
know.
we get too big, we're gonna call attention to ourselves and get thrown in jail.
Well, right. And so
Yeah,
that's like so like which is like yeah, like what do we mean by a small group where like at least in America, like what I'm saying like in China, it's a definite pro because hey, we might survive.
yeah.
Like we might live.
It's
Um,
survival at that point.
yeah. In America, that could be seen as a con because it's like we're all quiet and spread out. And I don't know. But I just wanted
Yeah,
to point that before, like when you say like are small groups and like are they necessary? Like does a church need to have them? It's like well, depends on where you're at. China,
yeah.
like yeah, we need to have them. That's how we survive.
Or like in
America,
Muslim countries.
yes, or Muslim countries, or even like Indonesia, like the Philippines, like there are places where Christianity is just not it's not legal.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
I think that really speaks to, I mean, even as you're saying with the pro, that really speaks to how small groups tend to lend themselves up to church plants or
Yeah.
church startups, right? Because you can start just one or two people or two or three people reading the Bible together and then slowly grow bigger and bigger as you're starting to invite, as you're starting to reach out, as you're starting to invite people into this small group that eventually you have a church on your hands.
Right. Like that's how like yeah, you get like a core group that could be like yeah, they're a small group.
And I've heard
And
some churches use that too. It's like, hey, I feel like I'm called to be a pastor, and then the pastor is like, okay, I can't really just like give you a building. Maybe you should start meeting with a group of people and meet every week in your house, and maybe on a Thursday, and see if the Lord blesses that, like if you end up with the problem of too many people and you have to go find four walls in a steeple, you know,
yeah, and it's like now we meet at a, rented out old bank and we're Calvary Chapel, whatever town you're in,
yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Like it's just like and it just took off.
Yeah.
And so like uh yeah, small groups cause mutiny. No, I'm just kidding. I'm playing. But
Yeah, it
there's
definitely
a
shouldn't
ton
be
of
sheep stealing, but
yeah.
that
But I
has
want to
happened
start
as
with
well.
yeah. Yeah, it has happened, which is pro and con. Like that wasn't
Yeah.
even a listed pro or con.
Yeah.
It just happened. But like I want like we should start with like the pros. I don't want to just like
Yeah.
we kind of explain what it might be, what might not be, but like I just want to preface like we're not poo-pooing like small groups. Like that's for sure.
Right.
Like small groups they're good and they have like all things they can have cons, but I think
Hmm.
there's way more pros than cons. Would you agree? I think
Yeah.
maybe
I
50-50. I don't know. Did we ruin everything?
No, no, no. I think with the pros, and I think honestly we might be talking more about the cons because when it comes to the pros, qualitatively they outweigh the cons. But there's a lot to know about where things can go awry, right?
Good.
So they're
Yeah,
more
good
like
distinction.
maybe they're less like cons, more like red flags. When we start going into of like, hey, maybe you want to run your small group with this in mind that it can go awry this way and sort of start to build in parameters or just be very intentional with being involved, so you can see these signs. And that maybe
Sure.
just going back to the pro, that's one of the things that the small group does so well is it has that intentionality built into it, right? You do have to come in, you have to meet up, you have to um, study, be ready for, and then you have maybe two, three, four, five, six, eight, 12
9,
people
10, 12, 15,
12
20. I'm just
people
kidding.
at like I'm saying is probably your most, in my opinion. But you have these people, they're coming in, and it's such a small, intimate setting that it's like you can sort of have that time that you couldn't on a Sunday with a whole congregation say, hey, how's your week going? Hey, last week we prayed over this. Is there any update? how's that going?
Right.
Is there a praise report that we can just say, and you can sort of bring all of that stuff to the table that allows for the intimacy of really being in the lives of the people there that a mega church loses completely almost. And I have heard of mega churches that utilize the small group, but I mean generally when you get to like stadium size mega churches that
Right.
we see on TV and stuff, it's like that pastor doesn't know the person in the first row.
Yeah, and how can you? Like you're
Yeah,
just a human, right? Like even if
right.
you have great motives, like it's or like small groups only 10 people, but you have
Yeah.
100,000 people. Well, you divide that by 10, like that's over 100, 100,000
Yeah.
small groups. Like so, um, it's tough, but it does invite discipleship though. That
Yeah.
like that you and I've seen a lot of like bigger churches where well sometimes it justifies them for or they feel justified where why the sermons aren't as deep as they
Mm.
could be. I don't want to say watered down or fluffy, but it's like, oh, well, that's not really the purpose for our sermons at whatever church.
Yeah.
That's what our small groups do, as opposed to like, whoa, 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 like don't make small groups do what the sermon's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Like you got to find that balance. Yeah,
It's funny
which
that you say that
pro
too,
and con,
because my church, we started a midweek service recently, and I have an
right?
intentional small group beforehand, and it's for that exact purpose. We have a, a specific small group that right now is broken between men and women. Right now, the women kind of um, are more than the men. So I'm looking maybe in the future I might have to split, which is a wonderful thing because when you split, that's a good thing.
Right,
You have too
exactly.
much now. And so we're looking forward to splitting. But right now it's men and women, which is a really natural split for this. But the small group at the beginning, we get to dive into the Bible together, right? I'm asking, what are the observations that you're seeing here? What do you guys take out of this passage? And I try and say as little as possible, right?
Hmm.
I just want them to talk. I want them to interact with it, ask questions, apply it to the world, like, oh, just like, Nehemiah, we're going through Nehemiah, just like Nehemiah did this, I'm seeing this, in our culture. And it's like, yeah, make those connections, do all of that right now, bring it to life.
Right.
Obviously, I'm not. We're still doing exegesis, so I don't want them to just say, "Oh, this is about me." But
Yeah, tell
in
me
a
what
very,
this means to
yeah,
you.
yeah, in a
Yeah.
very real way, they're taking the Bible, they're exegeting it, and then they're bringing out applications for themselves. And then
Nice.
after that hour, I can sort of break it down myself in a very expositional way for the midweek service sermon. And then that's
Nice.
what we're doing for midweek. And I couldn't do that and they wouldn't have that opportunity because Sundays don't lend themselves to that.
Right.
Sundays I'm at the pulpit. We're not talking back and forth. They can't tell me their insights. And I'm preaching the gospel. So I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. They create this environment that is otherwise impossible on a Sunday.
Right. Like you have to, and you brought up that it is a pro. It is that intentionality where it's like
Yeah.
this is it's not different um in like caliber or quality but like yeah it
Yeah.
quantitatively it's like hey we're going to be able to it would be like when could you imagine like yeah like you give us like I don't know how many people would stay for it, but just the idea, like you have a Sunday service, right? You give a sermon, and then you have like an actual like breakout session. Like every
Yeah.
Sunday, we instead of like a potluck, but like have lunch, but then we go and we like break down questions we have from the sermon or
Hmm.
something that stood out to you, and that's not like necessarily inherent like only to a small group
Yeah.
but like, yeah, you're creating an environment that you like. It's like, hey, we might not be able to do this on Sunday morning, but I don't want to like not talk about it. Like,
Right.
hey, let's be able to kind of meet together, different times, different settings, but like be able to discuss these things. And like, who wouldn't want that? Like, that is
Yeah.
discipleship. That's how you uh, create those opportunities.
Yeah,
Uh,
that informal setting allows them to be more comfortable, right? They can sit back, they can actually respond, they can talk back. That informal setting lends themselves to sort of let loose a little bit, and I think that's why I'm enjoying this small group that's being started, and I'm not even necessarily part of it, right? And I'll get back to that in a second, but being in a small group, I can't pray for someone on a Sunday over what they're going through because I won't hear it. I'm at the pulpit. But in a small group, they're going through their week. Man, this is what I'm going through. This just came up and my car just broke down. This person just said this. My job is this. And I'm able to just see them kind of unload in a bit because it's an informal setting, and they're bringing their real troubles that they're going through here day to day, and then we can pray about it together, and that wouldn't happen if it was a formal setting, like a church service. But even also
right.
with that, as I talked about, I generally don't try to lead my small groups because most of the time I'm the preacher. So I have to trust people that I'm sort of raising up or trying to step up into ministry. So small groups even allow for people to grow in maturity in Christ, step up into ministry, take on positions that allow them to essentially take on another talent or another minute or
Oh,
and
for sure.
and
Like,
step up into that because I mean, here's the frank reality. Dave, you and I, we're not the only ones that have the gift of teaching and preaching.
what? And thankfully not.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And
Like,
and someone who may be in a congregation who is gifted in that, it's really hard to give them a Sunday service, right?
oh,
But I
definitely.
can I can allow them to maybe take the lead on a small group one Wednesday, and see how they do with that, and then give them some feedback, some critiques, because they can't do much harm, but they can learn a lot and do a lot of good. And then I can start to, trust them more, throw more onto them, maybe lead more, and just watch them grow with that. So these small groups sort of also lend themselves to spiritual maturity and growth, and even exploring your spiritual gifts in that
Oh,
sense.
100%. Like, that's we don't, we're a smaller church, so our ministries are almost small groups in and of themselves. I already mentioned that. But like,
Yeah.
that's people like all something like, how do you vet your elders and deacons? Like, that's how I pick. Like, that's how
Yeah.
we pick our elders and deacons,
Yeah.
because I see, okay, who are the men that are attending the ministries and
Right.
participating in those ministries, and then like, what's their conduct, what is their speech, what are they providing, um like, and even, and like, I mean, sometimes it's like, yeah, like, we have a lot of guys, like our elders and our deacons, they're now running ministries. So I help out with Sunday school, but I'm not in charge of Sunday school. I've helped out with the men's ministry meeting. I participate in some of the discussion, but I don't lead it. I have other elders for that. It's kind of like the Moses model.
Yeah.
I don't have to, and so I can focus on other pastoral duties, like making sure the sermon's done and people feel loved and prayed for and visited, and and they're prayed for, because it's like, I don't have to worry about being the one man band where I have to do the Sunday school and the small groups and the prayer meeting, and the men's and the events, and like, you just name all the ministries a church could have, because I have godly men that, like, yeah, 10 years ago, yeah, he was the guy that was just like first attending the men's Bible study.
Hmm.
And now, like, he participated wonderful feedback, awesome insights that only the Holy Spirit could help you see. And it's like,
Yeah.
now I think you need to lead the men's, you know? Like you've been here for a while, you've been doing this, like, and it's like, especially when you have folks who are like, well, I've never led it before. I don't know if I can do it. And I'm like, can you just do what you've done in the men's ministry for the last 10 years? Like, just do what you've been doing in your participation.
Yeah.
Like, just keep up the
It's
good
it's like
work kind of
I
thing.
didn't trust this person, straight off the street to take the pulpit. I saw them faithfully leading for an extended period of time, which is
Yeah.
exactly the qualifications that, in some sense, that you need in order to look at someone for elder or deacon like that. They need to be someone who is known by the congregation, who has withstood the test of time. And how have they done that? Right? They've been part of a small group, or maybe they were an usher or something, and you've seen them to some capacity in ministry, slowly growing. And with a small group, it's like there's teaching opportunity in there. And I got
Yeah.
to see them teach a diva, or I got to see them lead it, and I can trust them because they've been doing it for this amount of time.
Right. And people listen to them. Like
Yeah.
they don't think that they're like all that or that like, oh, here's my 2 cents.
Oh,
And it's like I'm seeing people like they want to know what Dave thinks. They want to know what Mike thinks.
yeah.
They want to know what brother Stan thinks. Like what whoever it is. It's
Hmm.
like that like people are like noticing like okay, this dude or this lady is like there's just like yeah, they have a gift where they are just
Yeah.
seeing things. But then at the same time, because it's not Sunday, because maybe they didn't go to Bible college, because maybe, you know, or because you're the pastor and you're like, okay, well, hey, these small groups are led by these four people. I'm not going to be at every single one. I'm not going
Hmm.
to be able to vet it's a lot of trust
Yeah.
involved.
Absolutely.
And like we know as pastors, Mike, like Paul talks about this. Hey, to keep me from being conceited, the Lord gave me a thorn in my side. I begged him 3 times, and he didn't take it from me to keep me from being conceited.
Right.
And we know we're not apostles, but we're pastors. People want to know what that's that's why we have people listen to the podcast, not
Yeah.
because we're special necessarily, but it's like, but what does Mike have to say? A lot of people are talking about this topic, but what does Dave have to say?
Yeah.
Um, and so you can like anybody, you can get puffed up and you're like, hey, they want to hear me. It's like, and then you can feel like the final say sometimes on certain things.
Yeah,
And it's
and
like,
that's a good segue actually to the cons of it, right?
right,
Because I feel like you sort of alluded to it there, but you took the positive approach of like, hey, you can really step into this.
I'm
But like,
trying to be
yeah, but
more
I mean,
positive.
you're an optimist in some senses, and I wouldn't call myself a pessimist as much as I would call myself a realist at times.
Oh, okay. He's a realist. I'm just
uh,
kidding.
but like maybe moving more into the cons now. Um, as someone is being entrusted, the pastor isn't always there because there is this aspect of trust, right? I mean, I can't be
Oh, yeah.
there, otherwise I would be teaching it. I need you to be there. I need you to run it because I can't, right? There's that level of trust. Moses is not judging everyone. He is following up with the leaders, but he's not there when they're judging, right? So there's that
Mm,
level of trust, which creates this area of a potential misstep. Maybe this person is teaching something outlandish as they're going through a particular book, like maybe Second Peter or something, right? And it's like, oh, Jesus went to actual literal hell, uh, which is
wait, he didn't?
yeah, which is a whole thing. Maybe we could do that another day. But like,
Yeah.
maybe they're teaching something that you don't necessarily agree with, and the passage sort of calls for that or brings that up, or someone asks a question.
Oh
Um,
gosh, like
that
above
could,
my pay grade.
yeah, that could cause a potential misstep. But even more than that, too, now that they're the leader over the small group and maybe it's starting to grow, they get this sort of ego of like, look at what I can grow this group. I can lead. I'm a leader. I have this, and maybe even do that comparison game too, right? Because so here's two red flags comparison. They're comparing themselves to another group, saying, this group only has 6 people. I'm now at 12. We're looking at splitting mine. I'm a really good leader, and then become domineering. You need to do this. You need to do that, and so they become this sort of little tyrant under the
Mm.
cover of a small group leader and not being checked up on. And I've seen that
Uh-huh.
happen before too.
Mutiny.
Yeah,
Like,
no, I've seen that happen before too, and usually it gets pretty bad before the pastor and the associate pastor hear about it, because it does travel up. It always ends up getting
mm,
addressed. That's the whole purpose of the small group. But damage gets done, right? And so
oh yeah.
I think that's one of the red flags that you gotta know can happen if you're starting a small group. The more intentional you can be in stepping in and just making sure that everything's okay, is the more that you can sort of guard from that coming up.
Yeah, well, because like, what do you like? You have had like, what if um, or even like Mike, like, what if you or I, we weren't leading the small group, but it was the small group that we were a part of, you know, where it's like, oh, well, this is the pastor's small group, and it's like, I'm not even leading it. It's not even at my house. Yeah, but it's the one that you go to. And
Yeah.
like, yeah, and it's just like, y'all, like, I'm just another dude.
Yeah.
Like chill out. Like, and it's like also, or even like, because you know what ministry is like. Like, what if you wanted to go to a small, like, for selfish reasons? I want to go to a small group for me. Like,
Right.
I don't want to be on duty, kind of thing. Like, I want to go to a small group because I need to be ministered to,
Yeah.
and I want to study God's word for fun and not be like the on call fact checker guy that you all look over at to see
Yeah.
if brother or sister so and so got it right. It's like, can I just enjoy the study? You know?
That's sort
Oh,
of a unique problem that you and I have, because it's sort of funny. I do have people that I trust with leading the small group, but I'll still sit in there sometimes, right? Because
I'm
I
so
w-
glad you're in here, Mike.
like I
Seriously.
I
Your
want to
input's so
hear
valuable.
I want people to pray for me, right? I'm going through some stuff too. I want to hear their engagement, because I love hearing what people get from the Bible themselves, right? I,
Yeah,
I
and it
love
helps
to
your
hear that.
sermons too, right? Like, you
Yeah,
know, oh, hey, I'm hearing what they're going through. I know what to kind of be preaching. Like,
right,
not just some sermon that's like it could apply to anybody, but like, oh, this is what they're going through because I
right.
heard it at small group.
Yeah, and just to say the nuggets of knowledge that they get out of the Bible is just wonderful, right? It's like,
It's
oh yeah, that
edifying.
really hit them. That's great to see, because the Lord's speaking to them in real time. I get to see that. And so sometimes I'll sit in the small group, but sometimes I'll still get like the small group leader looking at me like, are we good on time?
Yeah.
Should I move on? And I'm just like, dude, I don't know. It's yours. Go for it. Like
Well, like, and like,
I'm
it's
I'm just a
happened.
normal person right now.
Yeah. So, but Mike, like, so we've heard all this, but Mike, like, what does this all really mean for us? It's like, well, what they already said.
Yeah.
like like that's what I like, where it's just
Right.
like any final thoughts, and you go sermonette, like homily, you like final thoughts, like um because we're also like the guys that did Bible college and all that stuff, where it's like
Yeah.
we will find a fun fact everywhere.
Oh
you,
yeah.
so it's like if I have to tell myself don't talk, don't talk,
Oh
don't,
yeah.
like there's
Mhm.
always something to share. So it's like no, you make them sit in it. But it's like, but I just also know, like, if we're in a group or if we're not in a group, that could be like, oh, small groups are essential, but you're not in one. And it's like, uh, but at the same time, it's like there are people where it's like, oh, well, that seems to be the fun small group, or that's the hip
Oh
small
yeah,
group,
that comparison that they
or
do.
like, hey, like we're doing Leviticus, but they're doing, Revelation.
Yeah.
Like, and like, come, like, why, like I didn't pick this, and it's like, you know what I mean? Like, and it's just like,
Or
oh,
another
like,
one that I've heard. It's
What's
like,
up?
we're all going through the same book, but you know what? They meet up at Starbucks. They do it at Starbucks. Like, why can't we do it
Oh,
in a fun place?
yeah, it's so well, yeah, we do it at like we do it at
Hmm.
someone's house and they got their loud kids yelling in the basement.
Yeah.
And they all, they always offer us, water, and like it's just like, but like you're like, but
Yeah.
I don't like water. And it's like, like they're just being hospitable, you
Right.
know? And it's like, so you always got to be careful with that comparison game where it's like, hey, like I like those are red flags in the sense of like, I think you totally missed the point of the small group.
Yeah.
How do you put it nicely? Where it's
Yeah.
like, um, uh, I don't think any of our small groups are going to work for you, quite frankly. Like, yeah, they meet at Starbucks, uh, but they don't really like. You got to know the people, right? It's like
Hmm.
if I said like, hey, um, I wouldn't tell someone to stop meeting at Starbucks, but you know what I mean? It's like if you ask anyone in that group, like, do you guys do the small group because you meet at Starbucks, or because you
Right.
like meeting together? Because if it's the Starbucks, then we got to fix it like now.
Yeah.
Like no, like I don't know if you would agree. I'm
Or it'd be like,
kind of
just
blunt
to
with
let
it,
you
where it's like
know, they
we'll
kind of
stop it right now.
struggle through the Bible study a little bit because it's so loud at Starbucks, you
Yeah,
know?
but because I'm also like I don't. It's not like a perfectionist thing, but like I
Hmm.
don't. If I can help it, I don't want to do things that we can't do well, or like
Right.
I don't want to start a small group ministry just to say we have one when it's not really working. And I also
Yeah.
don't want to be like, hey, look, we meet at Starbucks, and I'm kind of like the so what? Like, like great, you meet at Starbucks, like they meet at their house, like setting obviously just like why we don't have church in the parking lot behind a bar necessarily because it's loud or a concert or there's cars driving by. That's why we
Hmm.
have it in a building if you can help it. But it's like setting
Yeah.
matters. But
And
at the
like,
same time, it's like why do you like the small group? Because I don't even want to be, oh, is it just because of the people there? Because like I think that would help a small group. It's like, well,
right.
because it's with these people. But like, yeah, like if you're looking at it like you would a club or a membership where, oh, but this small group has all these amenities
Right.
and like, oh, their house they have an espresso machine that they get and they have a in-home theater because they're rich, and so we can watch, our Devo on their master theater as opposed to, you know sharing a tablet or
Yeah.
something and you have crappy Wi-Fi. Like I don't know. Like
And even as you were saying that, I came to this other realization of like
not to rant,
the
but
comparison also inherently has the other red flag of like sort of these small groups can in some sense create like these like cliques. I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of. Like
yeah.
these subgroups that actually create disunity, right?
Oh, the
Because now,
irony, right?
yeah, now it's a segmented, and it's like, oh, that group does this, or like, and so there's that disunity there of, oh, that's the group that does this, we're the group that does this, and then even this sense of tribalism, right? Maybe that would be a better word of like, I have my loyalty to this group. Right, I hang around this group. When we go on a men's retreat, when we go on a retreat in general, or something like that, we break off back into these groups, right? And so we sort of start to lose the cohesive unity of we're just a church, right? And we can talk
Hmm.
to whoever we want because now we've had this set small group of loyalty and cliques, and you do have to break that up, and that has to be intentional. I was part of a church that was big on small groups, and one of the things that they did is I think every other week or every third group week or once a month, we would either join together with a different group and just keep mixing it up,
Oh,
or
nice.
do a big um, all the groups together. And so you have to have this sense of I need to intentionally break this small group every once in a while so that it doesn't become a tribe or a clique or whatever word you want to do it, because there is that sense of like, oh, they're the group that does this. And then in the
Mm,
other flip of the coin, it's like, well, we're the group that goes to Starbucks. We're way better than everyone. We're like inherently reading the Bible in front of everyone. Everyone gets to see it. You're over there in the corner doing this, so like our group's
losers.
superior.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
like Paul does that too. Like, yeah, is the body of Christ divided?
right.
Like, like, yes, like don't let the eye say to the hand, like, I don't need you, or the foot, I don't need you,
Hmm.
or you don't want the eye wishing that they were a foot, the foot wishing that they were an eye, but we need
Right,
each other. And so it's like by all means, like be happy that you have the group that you have if you're in a small group. By all means, like grow together in a unique relationship that you might not experience with all the members of your church, but don't act in such a way where you feel like you couldn't have that kind of
right.
relationship with the other members of your church. Where it's like, well, no one else at St. Paul's Church would get me like ladies group 2 gets me. Like like it's like, yes, you are purposely by default going to be going through life together, and you're going to be talking about more and experiencing more than the ladies, like with ladies in the other group or men with the other group or whatever. But like, yeah, but is Christ's body divided? We shouldn't, like, one group isn't better than the other, and like, yes, leadership matters. What you're learning and studying matters.
Yeah,
But like, yeah, please don't feel like it's like, you wouldn't be able to get out of a small group. You wouldn't be able to get out of the small group ministry what you're supposed to if you got traded to another team,
yeah. Oh,
you know?
that's something else altogether. Um,
Oh, what?
I've
You like that?
experienced something a little bit like that where there was not so much a split as much of a needed trade in a sense. One small group was
Yeah.
too small. This one was too getting too big.
Well, I was trying to bring it up without bringing it up. Yeah.
And so yeah, there's that sort of trade, and then you're like, well, I don't want to because I like this one, but this is kind of funny because I really relate to it as an introvert, but it's really small groups are difficult because they're really hard on introverts, right? If
They
you
are.
invite your friend for its first time to a small
Ugh,
group, which is
yep.
phenomenal because that's a great way to get someone started in church, is get them started in a small group so that they get sort of a small dose of
Yeah.
it and then they feel more comfortable on a Sunday. But
Pro.
the but but the con to that very same act is they show up to a group of 3 to 4 to 5 people and they're an introvert and now all eyes are on them. So
True.
it's too intimate in that sense
Yeah.
because
Tell us about yourself. We've
yeah,
never
well,
met you.
yeah, and all of a sudden everyone's looking at you. You're being you're being interviewed in some sense by a group of people that are just interested to see you for the first time.
Yeah. In
And then they're
someone
also
else's
like,
home.
yeah, and then
Like you've
they're
never
also
been to
saying
their
like,
house.
well, things like, well, Mike, like, how can we pray for you? What are you going through right now? I was like, oh, what? Dude, I just wanted to be a fly on a wall today.
Yeah, no, no. Tell me about the hardest parts of your life right now. Like,
Yeah.
it's so
So
true.
it can be really scary, and I
Yeah,
thought that
hot
was kind
seat.
of funny. You were getting to that and it was like actually yeah, that can be a huge thing to look out for.
Yeah. Well, and I go too far as an introvert or extrovert sometimes. Like like I have to be careful. Like I don't guard my answers, but I'm like, am I gonna make someone else uncomfortable?
Right.
I just know myself, like, as an extrovert that doesn't mind being vulnerable and sharing, I know I have to go last or next to last.
Hmm.
Because if I go first, like, I will, not, like, totally set the tone, but it's like, "Oh, crap." Like, it's not like I can't top that guy, but it's like, "Oh, man," he told us that, like, you know he's bitter. He gets frustrated. He had a moment like I think he's like I'm a pastor, but it's like I think he's like one of the elders, and he was talking about like how he's like angry at God. He's like struggling. Like he's like at this moment he's struggling with like is God really good and does he really care? And it's
Yeah.
like
It's like,
he's
oh
like the
man.
elder guy.
I was just
Like
gonna say I need prayer for my math test this Tuesday.
yeah, that's I'm just trying to like I got like really like I got exams coming up, and then like I work at Starbucks and I got a new manager. Like like you're just trying to be like and like I guess I'm really like either they don't share because it's like I guess my life really isn't that bad because it's not going to beat that guy.
Now maybe that's a pro though, you know?
Yeah,
It's
maybe
like,
it's a
well, maybe
I
it's
don't know.
not that bad.
Dodged a bullet on that one. Like good. We saved the sob story. No, but like you know what I mean. Like you
Yeah,
don't want to be like where the exact opposite of what you would want the small
right.
group to encourage happens. Where it's like we got together so we could be vulnerable, share, and like, and then like part of it's already inherently like an introvert's worst nightmare. We're like, this is so draining. I have no energy going into it. This is just like, please don't call on me. Like it could be like it's like, and then you're just like, I don't know you people. Hey man, I just, like what's your favorite color? Ah, like like it's just like, and
Oh yeah, those icebreakers. You know, it's so funny like
I'm like,
when you're coming up with
chartreuse. Like
icebreakers
yeah,
like just so we can get to know each other, just tell us your name and then I don't know, let's and this is the one I hate the most. Just tell me something embarrassing about yourself.
uh,
Uh
I crack under pressure.
like one
Just
one I don't think about myself that often to know what my most embarrassing moment is or something embarrassing about myself. Two, I'm embarrassed by it.
like I'm embarrassed by you asking, like let
Like,
alone you
why would
telling
I
me.
tell you something that I feel embarrassed and am ashamed of?
Yeah, like no, like worst case scenario, just like hey, just picture everybody naked here, and and just like it's not that kind of a group, and so
Yeah,
it's um like or even like especially like your first time, like not just like
yeah.
like imagine like you just get thrown into someone's house, you've like not thrown in, but like I
It's
had to
called
find the
kidnapping.
address, I've never been there, one person,
Yeah.
and like and you're an introvert and you're bad at names, and you're like this is Carol, this is her,
Oh,
her husband Steve, this is so and so, that this is her niece, and you're like, wait, what? And it's like, but she goes to a different church, but she loves being a part of our small group,
yeah.
and then but like, and you're like, what? And
Yeah.
you're like, do I need to get like the name tag that goes like, hello, my name is
Okay, I gotta insert this other thing, and hopefully our
sorry,
listeners
y'all.
just know, guys. I would really like to stop doing this popcorn prayer or things that are popcorn related. I go to a small group for the first time. We do that little icebreaker thing. Now all of a sudden I have to have everyone's names memorized, and then we go to popcorn prayer. It goes on to me. I'm second or third person, and I have to remember someone's name. I'm
No,
like, I don't know you. You, that
no,
guy
no.
over there. I'm sorry I don't remember your name. This is so embarrassing. The icebreaker from earlier, this moment right now.
Yeah, like what most embarrassing thing? This is
Yeah, this is the
embarrassing,
most
and like,
embarrassing
and
thing.
it's not
I'm
even. I'm
never
not.
coming back.
And like, what if like, yeah, what if it's Steve's niece, and you're like, I don't remember you, Steve's niece, and it's not even about you. It's your teacher. Like, it's not even like.
Yeah.
And guys
Oh,
were like, obviously, kind of like poking at it,
yeah.
like it's not this bad or this crazy all the
Well,
time.
no,
But like,
these
we
are
want to
like,
be real. Like this
yeah.
happens, and I've
These
thought
are all things I've gone through personally
yeah,
as an
like
introvert.
you've experienced this, like I've experienced this, um, and so there's like even if you're not an introvert, or like well we're pastors, like quite Mike, like you can't help but feel like sometimes like it's like if I answer this question honestly,
Yeah.
are people going to think differently about me? Like what
Right.
do I do? Do I be honest? Do I overshare? Not overshare? Like you got to read the room.
Yeah.
Uh,
Or I'm just gonna in because this one's related, but I do think actually I do want to mention this one. really just for you folks, if you guys go through something, or if you're a Bible study leader, or if you have a small group leader, something like this, please don't do this. And you might not even know that you guys do this, because you guys have awesome memory and you don't have people like me that have terrible memory. But if you guys go through a prayer circle and then you say, okay, all right, can you pray for Bill? And then who wants to pray for, guys? We went through 20 minutes of prayer requests. I don't remember what Bill said. I don't
Oof.
remember who he wanted me to pray for, and I don't remember what they were going through. And it's really embarrassing for me to say, "Hey, Bill, can you repeat that, buddy?" I
Yeah.
swear I was paying attention.
Yeah.
Like,
Lord, I don't know, but you know.
yeah,
You know,
and then
like,
like if you're too embarrassed to say the person's name, like I just want to pray for my brother over there, just like
yeah, over there.
yeah,
Like,
just
hey, yeah, third seat from the leader, third seat to
it's
the
just Heavenly Father, you know his name. I don't.
yeah, like it's like Duck Duck Goose, and it's like, oh great,
Yeah,
you're it, and now I gotta pray.
what he's going through, or a significant other or something, and what they need, and so
Like it's just yeah, it's like I could
yeah.
have prayed that prayer for anybody in the circle.
Yeah, and it's not like they ever give you like a notebook and some paper to like, all right, guys, we're gonna like popcorn this out, which is another thing I said don't do. But we're gonna popcorn this out, and then you have a whole list of prayer requests, and you don't know which one's gonna be assigned to you, and then now, so try and keep some structure to that if you do a small group, because it's really difficult to follow. As a small group leader, I write them down and then I don't typically lend it out. I'll just pray for it myself because I know that that's a problem.
Yeah, and now, but like, and you know what's interesting though, like, have you also, one of the down like things that can go crazy, like a con with a small group where because it's a more informal setting, like things can go off the rails real quick. Where
Oh yeah.
you're talking about the game, you're talking about something you saw a movie, something you
Hmm.
saw on TV. Whereas like Sunday mornings, you try to have like a general structure
Yeah.
of like okay yeah we had hospitality all right where the songs are starting like music starting by the time to get to our seats we're gonna start singing praises. We have prayer offering sermon like all that and not that uh a small group evening doesn't have some sort of a structure, where it's just kind of like, oh, we get started at 6, but Sister Sue and her husband they got in traffic, so they're going to be here like at 6:15. But we don't
Yeah.
want to get started without them because like,
So
and it's now we're now all 15 minutes later, and then but and so you end up talking, but now they show up, and it's like,
and then
well,
Doug
we
has to
just
go home for work early in the morning, so he
yeah.
has to leave early, and
Or like, what if you
yeah.
get started and they show like, okay, we're gonna pray. You get started on the Bible study, and then they show up at 6:15. Oh,
Hmm.
hey, Sister Sue and so and so. Hey, we were
Yeah.
just getting started. How was Trev? And it's just like it's
Yeah.
it's
That
not church, but
yeah,
it's
that
also to have a structure.
that informal feel that is also a positive that we mentioned earlier can be a negative. And it can even, as you said, it can be derailed. Now we're talking about Super Bowl that's coming up this weekend, and we've been talking about that for 15 minutes, and I just want to get back into the passage, right? So we can wrap
Yeah,
up, or it just broke out randomly because we're talking about prayer requests, and all of a sudden we're off in the tangent and want to roll it back. Like the fact that it's in an informal feel can actually lend to the negative as well.
correct.
And a good a Bible study leader or a good small group leader is going to be someone that has to be paying attention to that, because they need to be able to catch that and either let it run for a little bit or take it down immediately. Like, well, let's talk about Super Bowl another time. Let's just finish off prayer before we do that.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so that's something to watch out for. And I think the final one that I just want to mention here, because we're getting here at the end,
Yeah,
is small groups are small groups. which means they're limited in how many people they can hold before you need to split, before you're getting too big and you need to become a church. And that's just an inherent limitation to small groups. And so when you get to about 13 and you're like, sorry, we're gonna have to split into two sixes, and that's where that can be a real tough thing, as good as it is.
Especially when
Um,
people fall off. When they're
yeah,
just like you split them 6-6, and it's like, well, now we're six and they're two
yeah. It's
because
like, well,
four of them. Well,
since
I don't
I'm
want
not
to.
gonna be in this person's group, I'm not coming. And then yeah, and then now you have to bring them back in. But then now that everything's back together, you're back to 12. So it's like
And
the
it's like, well, you know what?
limitation.
If you can't meet for a small group without one person, it's like, why are you meeting? Like you kind of want to like not, you don't want to like shake the person, but it's
Right.
like you forgot the point. It's trying to give you another opportunity, another time during the week, other than Sunday, to go grow closer with the Lord and His
Hmm.
people. And if that's like, and now this, and we can disagree, but like now I'm kind of like, if this is like my last 2 cents final piece, where like, if that's not what you want out of a small group, then I don't
Right.
think a small group's right for you.
Yeah.
Like I don't think like you won't fit. like you're just and I'm not saying don't try, don't, but like that might be even an initial motivation.
Right.
Someone, and that's what gets you in the door. But please, like that's not what's supposed to keep you there.
Yeah.
I want you to be able to encounter the Lord and other people, a part of the church that you attend,
Right.
and you're being knit together as a family. So,
Yeah.
um,
That's pretty right on. I agree with that. I think
oh
one
no, he agreed with me. I don't know.
I really disagree with that, Dave. I think
Yeah,
the whole
thank
point
you.
is to be outside of the Lord, and
There we go. Yeah, thank you.
that's the whole purpose. If we wanted to be in the Lord, we'd be just in church. I'm just kidding.
Uh,
One thing I wanted to say, actually, just as one last piece of advice, because we really wanted to explore this and kind of bring our own um, experiences in this, so that you don't fall into those pitfalls. It's a lot of fun to reminisce about too, and laugh about. But one of the things I will also say, just as a tip, if you want to do small groups, be very consistent, right?
yeah. Oh, for
Consistent
sure.
with time, consistent with day, and consistent with if there's one person or if there's 12. Always show up, always be consistent, and always lead it, right? Like I said, even if it's one person, because if one person shows up and you're just like, well, maybe we won't do it this week, you've set the precedent that if there isn't enough people, I don't want to do it. Which you might as well not have it that week, which creates inconsistency, and inconsistency can be the death of small
Yep.
groups. So that's just one little tip that I just want to throw out there, as
That's a
we're
good
here
one.
at the end of the episode. And folks, we're out of time here. I really enjoyed this episode. I think we got a lot of ground covered when it comes to small groups, and a lot of really good practical advice. I mean, we covered what it is, sort of our little ballpark estimation of about how big to how small it is, a little philosophy behind that, how it's grounded in scripture, and a lot of things to take into account, whether you want to implement it for yourself, and what to watch out for. And those are big ones as well. I mean, guys, really watch out for that stuff, because that is baked into the cake. All that stuff will happen if you're not paying attention. And so we just wanted to really break out these nuggets of knowledge. And then that way, if you're a pastor, or if you're maybe wanting to be a pastor, right, you're called to it, and your pastor's giving you the approval, and you want to invite some friends that don't go to your church and stuff and start your own and see where that grows, the small group might be an avenue, or maybe even an evangelism if you start one at your school. Uh, Great way to do this. So small groups are really awesome, but you want to use them wisely. And so this was a really important episode to us, and we just wanted to cover that. that being said, we really appreciated this. Don't forget to like, don't forget to share, don't forget to subscribe, because each one of those subscriptions, each one of those likes, is just really important to us, and it's another way that that information gets out. So we really love you guys, and we will see you guys in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.